There's one financial shock that almost everyone experiences in their first year living abroad. And it's not rent, it's not the groceries, and it's not even taxes. Nobody really explains this before you move to France. So I'm going to walk you through 5 money surprises that almost every person hits in their first year in France. And I'm going to explain what actually causes them so that you can plan for like the reality instead of, this fantasy move to France life. Because truthfully, um, your financial rhythm is just going to completely break, right? And so you need to understand like what it is actually in the first year of moving abroad. These 5 money surprises. So here we go. Let's do with what I call the double start cost. And for me, this is the one of the first financial shocks, and it happens kind of like at the really really at the start, even sometimes just before you leave or as soon as you arrive. When you move to France or when you move abroad, so you're not just starting a new life, you're often paying to close one life that you left, and you're paying to open another life simultaneously at the same time. So you left Jamaica, you left the US, you left, wherever you are, and you moved to France, but you're paying to close out the life or where you left. And then when you get to France, or when you move abroad, there's obviously going to be like more, things that you need to work through, of course. And so this is what I like to think of it as like the double start cost. And I had this every time I moved abroad, like even when I moved to Colombia, when I was living in India, and of course when I moved to France the 2 times, I had this like double cost because I had to close out what was going on before to now. And so you might still be, to give like examples, you might still be paying rent in, your old country, like closing out, or you just finished finalizing the rent and you're waiting on your deposit if you made a deposit. But then you have to start paying rent um, or housing in France. Moving costs, of course, is a lot. Like if you're shipping things or you're storing things back home, then you also have like that kind of cost as well. Mm, I talked about rental, but you should also like look at like temporary housing. That's like a thing. You might not find your apartment or the one that you'll settle in immediately. So that's also like a cost. Administrative fees, it's France. You're moving to France. Or you're just moving abroad, there will be administrative fees. New insurance if you need it. You might need new transport setup, even just, taking public transportation. Because, for example, in Paris, taking public transportation, it's currently almost 100 euros per month to go across different zones on the metro or the trains. And a lot of countries, when you are abroad, will have this sort of like abonnement subscription, like monthly subscription for transportation that you pay into to get access, like unlimited access or free time or whatever. Just like how, New York might have the Metro card and things like this. So that's also like cost new transport setup, or maybe you're buying a car or you want to have like a rental for a few moments for, some weeks or months or whatever. Those are just in general, you're gonna have transport cost, and you might be closing out transport cost back home. So like for me, when I last moved to France, I was selling my SUV. Every time I get on here, I burp. When is it ever going to end? But anyways, yes, I was selling my SUV and I was closing that out, and that just comes with cost of selling um, your vehicle, even if you're gonna get money afterwards, if you get money afterwards, because you might have a loan attached, blah 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 blah. But anyways, new transport setup is you're gonna be closing out one, back home, and you're likely going to be opening up a new one where you move abroad. And furnishing your apartment, if this is what you're doing, is also going to be another cost. In France, you can rent an apartment unfurnished or furnished. And unfurnished has like varying degrees of what that means. Sometimes, like, there's nothing but the kitchen sink. Like, literally, nothing but the kitchen sink. That is in the apartment. I know in the Netherlands, is it Netherlands? Yeah, I think it's in the Netherlands. You move, and even sometimes the floor, as in the flooring, like the tiles and whatever, you have to install those. Like, you don't even get tiles. People move out with the tiles and floorings and that sort of thing. So, this doesn't happen in France, but there are just varied degrees of furnishing or unfurnished that will happen. When you have a furnished apartment, it might just only be, you know, the general basics just to make things ready to move in, like a bed, fridge, one of those mini fridges. I call them the French fridge. You might not have a table, or you might have a tiny one that is not very practical. Things like this, or you might get like a super duper well furnished apartment. It just really depends. Long story short is that you're gonna have what I call the double start cost, and you're gonna have these double start financial problems. And many people, when they first move abroad, they don't they underestimate how much this cost happens when you just move. Because I think you're like forward thinking, right? You're thinking about what's my budget in the new country that I'm going to, and we underestimate how many times you, in like the first month or two, you'll be paying double. You'll be paying twice for the same things because you have to like close things out. And the expenses don't really happen gradually, like they stack. It just happens one by one, bang, 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 bang. Like, you have to do this. And I think many people budget for their new monthly life. And you might think that that's the way to go, and it's important to budget for your new monthly life. But when you're moving abroad, this is a surprise. The double start is, you need to budget for the startup phase, as in the running capital and things that, expenses that are happening in both places. And that startup phase can easily cost several months of normal expenses, and it's like compressed into a few weeks. So, this is one of the surprises that you likely will have if you don't plan for it correctly in your first year when you move abroad. And the next part is one that actually catches most people off guard, because it's not about how much things cost, it's about when the money hits. And this is the second money surprise that people have in their first year, especially when they move to France. And this is the admin delay cash gap. Yes. Like, I don't know how to explain to you the administrative, bureaucratic delay that is France. I've been shocked. I've lived in France a total of almost 9 years in total, and I'm still shocked at just how bureaucratic things can be. I mean, even in Jamaica, many things don't make sense from an admin standpoint, right? But I just feel like France takes it next level. So the admin delay and the cash gap that happens is the second money surprise that people really underestimate when they move abroad and when they move to France. And that is really, to really kind of like explain it, is that many things take longer than you expect. Your first salary payment might not happen when you're used to. So, for example, many Americans, people in the U.S., are accustomed to being paid fortnightly, so they're paid twice per month, every 2 weeks or whatever, right? The 15th of the month, the 30th of the month. Even our employees, in or at where I work, for me managing the payroll for U.S. Employees, yeah, that's something to take into consideration, which is not the same in France. In France, you're paid normally once per month, and it's usually very often like the last work day, like the 30th, the 27th, if you're lucky. But it's really, really the last day, and things like holidays, like they don't care. For example, in December around Christmas time in Jamaica, you get paid super early. Normally, so in Jamaica, generally, payday is like the 25th of the month. But at Christmas time, because you have Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, so the 24th, 25th, 26th, all of that are kind of like just blocked, right? And so you will get paid sometimes on the 20th. I've received payment in Jamaica, salary payment on the 18th of December before, just depending on how the calendar runs and when it's a Friday and things like this, blah, blah, blah. But your first salary payment may take longer than you expect. Sometimes if your bank is not set up correctly in France, then it might be a delay. So when I was, for example, teaching assistant long ago in France, I had to set up my bank account within, what was it, like the first 3 weeks of having arrived? Listen, just the idea of setting up a bank account first 3 weeks of arriving. Mind you, I was unhoused for the first 2 days, and that was just a different drama. But setting up, I had to set up my bank account and get that organized in the first 3 weeks in order. Was it the first 3 weeks? It wasn't in the first 3 weeks. It was like on the 10th of the month. Yeah, it was like on the 10th or something like this. So within 10 days in order to be paid at the end of that month. So if you arrived in October, I think you normally arrive in October as a teaching assistant, then or teaching starts in in October. And so by the 10th of October, and usually people arrive at the end of December. By the 10th of October, end of September, I mean, by the 10th of October, you need to have your bank account and everything set up if you want to be paid at the end of October. If you miss that timeline, if you miss that 10th of October deadline, then you're going to get your salary at the end of November. Yes, you're going to get the 2 months, but you still have to wait 2 months. You'll be 2 months without a salary. And you need to budget for that sometimes. You might not know. So this is like salary payments can take longer than you expect for varied reasons that I've just explained. Reimbursements if you need them. So like housing deposits, for example. Remember I said if you're closing out like rent or in your home country, and you're waiting for your deposit back, sometimes that takes longer than you expect, and just bunch of other things. If you need housing assistance approvals to reduce your rent, because you're able, depending on how you arrive in France, depending on your status, your visa status and things like this, whether you're a student, your age, blah blah blah, you can get housing assistance in France, but the approval process varies and it can take much longer. Paperwork validation for just all sorts of things will take longer. Opening bank accounts, which I just discussed, can take super long. There's like a whole catch-22 about getting bank accounts in France. I think in general, moving abroad, like you need an address to get a bank account in France, but you need a bank account to get an address in France. Anyways. So during that delay, all the point of this is that during that delay window, you're still going to be paying for everything because you have to live, you have to deal with administrative things, you have to take public transportation, you have to deal with transportation, you have to do all of the things that are And people really underestimate that like delay administratively, the delay and the cash gap. So what happens is that you might technically have a job and you might technically be settled in your own way, but your cash flow just has not stabilized yet. And that's the gap, and that gap creates a lot of stress because you have like an extra delay of a month or two. And so it's not the cost itself, but it's really the timing and understanding that you might have um, delays in the timeline of when you're gonna be getting cash or not administratively. Really, if there is nothing that you take away from this video, then this is the one. Is that do not underestimate the delay, the cash gap that administrative things or bureaucracy can cause and how it will impact or can impact your budget. And the third part, the third point, the third surprise, I would say, is the housing entry cost. And I don't mean monthly rent. I mean the entry cost of getting getting housing, right? In in France, to get an apartment, you're going to, and in many places when you move abroad, but when you're moving to France, you're gonna need a deposit. You're gonna need the first month rent. What am I saying? You're gonna need a deposit. You're gonna need the first month rent. You're going to need agency fees if you're using a rental agency to help you find a place. They tend to have like nicer stuff, but sometimes you're lucky and you don't need an agency. You also need um you have to do an état de lieu. État de lieu. Well, how do you say this? It's like an inventory, like the state of the place. So when you are renting a place, when you said okay and it's confirmed, like yeah, you're renting, blah blah blah, then you need to review the state of the place upon entry, and then you also have like an exit review as well. But the entry one is called the état de lieu, so the state of the place, and they check like everything, right? But you have to pay a fee for this many times, especially if you're going through an agency. So you have just double agency fees. You also need to provide proof of income. You need a guarantor, or like an equivalent that will say in the event that you default on your rent, I guarantee that I will cover it. And it's like a whole nother thing. But in France, these are just the things that you will need. There are tons of ways to approach this and to get around all of these things, and it's not as doom and gloom as I'm like making it out right now. But these are the things that you do need to have sorted or have an idea of how to sort it even before moving in, right? So you might arrive, or you might, when you're moving to France, you're planning to move to France, you might be thinking, okay, my rent will be X per month. But the real question is really about how much does it cost to even enter the housing? Like, what do I need beforehand? And that's like the number that, or the amount that surprises many people, and they underestimate it. And this is actually one of the reasons I created my workshop, because you don't need more inspiration about moving to France. You want to move to France. We already know this. What you need are the tools to realistically map whether your move works financially and logistically before you start. And so my workshop was designed to like give you the tools for how to move to France. And it's based on real life, my real life experience, and working with clients in a provable way. And you'll have also a budget tracker that's tailored to France and French cost of living across different cities, because it's different. Plus a whole other bunch of real life lessons on how you move abroad and how you move to France. And I'll put the link below for you to check it out. But let me keep going, because there are a few more first year surprises, like money surprises, that you definitely want to know. Fourth money surprise is rebuilding your daily life. And these are things that you never think about. And that are just simple things about how do I rebuild my daily rhythm and the things that I need when I'm in this new country. And it's simple things like kitchen basics. You will have, oh my God, like sometimes you just need a potato peeler and you're just like, I don't want to use a knife today. I want a potato peeler. Just simple things, egg beater, whatever. You need, a spatula, blah, blah, blah. So kitchen basics, bedding. Sometimes you're not provided this or you just want your own. Winter clothes that suited to the climate if you don't have any, especially if you're moving from a warm climate like Jamaica and moving to France during winter or when it's much colder. I prefer buying winter clothes in the country that I'm in until I get like really more. So this is what I did beforehand. Until I started like getting a much more practice. But I did spend a lot of my childhood in the US, and so I spent a lot of winters in the US as well. And so I had like a general idea, and I even had some um winter clothes available. Childhood, like a lot of my time, even when I was an adult, was spent in during winter time in the US. And so I had some winter clothes that I could use, but I didn't like, and I also did a bit of shopping in the US, just for the currency conversion. Was a little bit cheaper, but it's always better to buy winter clothes, I think, in the country that you are to make it suited for the climate. You want to have a starter pack if to come to France, but don't buy everything there because each country will have like their different climate. Also, each region in France has like a different climate and there are things that you need more. So, Paris is like it's quite rainy, much more rainy than you'd think, but it's not, I don't think it's very windy. So umbrellas work. But in the south of France, in Toulouse, when it rains, there's a lot of wind, and so umbrellas don't work. It's better to have hoods. Stuff like this, just whatever, right? You never think about rebuilding your daily life and the cost that's attached to it for things like small appliances, transport cards. I talked about this, but in Paris, it's almost 100 euros. In other places in France, it can be as cheap as like 30 euros per month. Um, it varies just depending on where you are. Also, if you're buying a car, then petrol, gas, and all of these things, adds up. Your phone, how to set up your phone, because it's better to have a phone subscription than pay as you go. Just other types of like local subscriptions. Like none of these are huge individually on their own, but together when you're rebuilding your daily life when you move abroad, um, it can drain your first year budget very quickly, quietly and quickly. And it's not, so the mindset here is you're not just relocating, but you're also rebuilding infrastructure and systems for your life to maintain a daily routine. And that can really add up in financially. The final shock isn't administrative like we've talked about. It isn't financial, it isn't even logistic, it's emotional. The emotional money mistake that people make in their first year when they move abroad and when they move to France is you're more likely to spend money trying to make yourself feel stable in the way that you're used to. Or just to navigate unfamiliar things in the new country that you're living in. You will do this, you're likely to do this in your first year abroad. So that can look like taking taxis instead of trying to navigate public transport because it's new to you, or you feel like overwhelmed. um, France is organized in a very walkable way. Europe in general, I would say, it's organized to be walkable. But walkable also means 20 to 30 minutes. And like for example, when I was in Jamaica, I was not walking 20 to 30 minutes anywhere. Jamaica is not organized like this, or Kingston at least. When I was there. And so you take cars, you drive a lot. The US for many places are not organized like this. So it depends on like where you are, but you're gonna take taxis. You might end up taking taxis or Uber or ride shares or whatever instead of like trying to navigate transport. You might spend more money trying to make yourself feel stable by eating out more because cooking, you might be feeling like really tired, or you're trying to understand how supermarkets work because it's not always the same thing. Remember, I talked in one of my videos about the frozen supermarket Picard that I absolutely love. This isn't something that I did, for example, when I was in Jamaica, or even when I lived abroad in other places in Colombia, or for example, it wasn't something that I did. So approaching supermarkets is different because every country has like their own food culture, and so you might end up eating out more for comfort, for things that you might know, in because cooking is or shopping, grocery shopping can be like an overwhelming process, and you might end up paying for convenience because just everything feels new, and there are certain things that are just not normal, or you're just like, I do not have the energy to deal with this inconvenience. I prefer, let me spend, oh, it's only €5 more. Let me spend the €5 more to have more convenience. Um, because everything is new and overstimulating and it can be overwhelming. And this is normal, right? This emotional money mistake or money surprise is, I think it's a normal process, but nobody budgets for emotional spending, and you might not even know how you're going to end up spending emotionally, but absolutely it's going to happen. Like, you will emotionally spend in your first year abroad, your first year in France. You will, it's guaranteed. Like, so you need to have like a buffer for all of these. So excuse me, the first year financial shock, I would say, in France isn't really about like cost of living. Like, I didn't want to talk about prices of things. The five money surprises is about the cost of transition in your life. Like, how much does it cost in these different phases in your first year to transition your life from the one that you left to rebuild it in the country that you moved abroad to. And then once your systems stabilize, then France can actually feel financially like predictable, affordable, except for Paris, maybe not Paris, but everywhere else. Affordable. But in that first year, you will struggle a little bit more because you're going to underestimate a couple of things that we like, the five things that we just talked about. And there's just going to be things that you didn't know you needed to plan for. Because the first year, it's your adjustment year. So if you're planning your move, don't just plan for like your monthly budget, or like plan for your transition phase. Fill in the gaps because that's what actually determines whether your move feels stressful or whether your move to France is more manageable. And if you want more realistic breakdowns for how relocation actually works in France, then that's exactly what I talk about here, and my workshop link is below. I'm Diedre, and I help you to rebuild your life abroad because you absolutely deserve it if that's the life that you want. See you next time. Ciao.